Okay, so grade 7s, we are starting a new unit on fractions, decimals, and percentages. Our first lesson is on relating fractions and decimals, so this will be a review. Kayla, you are going to help me with the first question. We're not going to do all of them. So if I'm looking at A, 4 out of 10, which decimal does this match in this list? 0.4. So we need to write the letter A beside 0.4. Okay? Crystal, you're going to help me with 4 out of 1,000. Perfect. We've got 3 places after the decimal and 3 zeros. So we put a B there. You'll need to do the rest of them on your own. Okay? Now, we're going to move to question 2. So the first step is to write the fraction as an equivalent decimal fraction. What is a decimal fraction? Carson?
Isn't it like decimal fraction isn't? Oh, so if you have the line, so it's 1 over something, so it's the numerator and the denominator.
So the denominator is always what?
On the bottom.
And what is the denominator specifically in a decimal fraction?
Like tenths or hundredths.
It's a power of 10. So 10, 100, 1,000. Exactly. Okay, so if we have a 1/2, to make it into a power of 10, we need to make it with a denominator of 10. That is why we're multiplying by 5, the top and the bottom. So 1 times 5 is, Carson?
1 times 5 is 5.
And as a decimal, that gives me 0.5.
5.
Damien, you're going to help me with B. So if we have 1 out of 5, what do I need to multiply that by to make it a power of 10 on the bottom?
2.
Multiply it by 2, do the same to the top and the bottom, so that gives me 1 times 2 is?
10.
1 times 2 is?
Oh, 1 times 2, sorry.
And 5 times 2 is? 10. And then what will that be as a decimal?
0.2.
0.2. Okay? We are going to move on to question 3. We need to write 3 different fractions that are equivalent to the decimal. So, Kirat, 0.5. Can you give me one fraction that is equivalent to that?
5 tenths.
5 tenths. Okay? Now, we need 2 more. Kyler, can you think of another fraction that is equal to 5 tenths? Could we multiply or divide them both by the same thing? What could we multiply them both by? Should we start small with like 2? Okay, so 5 times 2 is 10, and 10 times 2 is 20. So 10 out of 20 is also equal to 5 out of 10. Ethan, can you give me one more fraction?
You could do like
1/2, 1 out of 2, because 0.5 is the same as half. There are literally infinite possibilities. You just have to choose any 3. Angus?
But do you put like the arrow pointing at the 10? Isn't it equal? So you'd put like the equal sign?
I could. What I did, this isn't actually supposed to be an arrow. This is a comma just to show that I'm writing a list of
Oh.
fractions.
Oh, I
But
thought
you're
you
right. It could totally be an equal sign between each one. Good question. Okay, is it fine if I leave you with the rest of question 3? Okay. Question 4. Write the decimal fraction as a fraction in lowest terms. So, this is Bailey. No, Allison. 0.35. What is that out of 100? 35. And now they've gone from 100 to 20. What did they divide by to get from 100 to 20? 20, 40, 60, 80, 5. So they divided it by 5, which means we need to do the same thing to the top, right? So 35 divided by 5 is 7. So it equals 7 out of 20. Can I make 7 out of 20 any smaller? No, 7 is a prime number, so that's my smallest one there. I am going to do b with you as well, okay? Johnny, 0.25. How do I write that as a decimal?
That would be 0 as a decimal.
As a fraction. Thank you for correcting me.
That would be 25 over 100.
Okay, what could I divide both of those by to make them smaller?
5.
Okay, so if I divided them by 5, what would that give me?
That would be 5 over 20.
5 over 20. Can I still divide this again?
No.
Yeah.
Can I divide 5 and 20 by anything?
4? Yeah.
Can I divide 5 by 4?
Yep. Right. Oh yeah, 1/5.
1/5. We'll divide them both by 5 again. Oh, is it 1/5 though? 5 divided by 5 is 1. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So we have to get it all the way down to lowest terms. You could just divide by 25 from the beginning, okay? And then it's one step, but if you take multiple, just make sure you get down as far as you can. Question number 5, you will need to do on another piece of paper, but I'm just going to do here. Describe the patterns in the numerator and in the denominator of the equivalent fraction. So, Angus, what happens to the numerator in question 1?
It goes up by 1.
Okay. So the numerator goes up by 1. What happens to the denominator? 5, 10, 15, 20.
It goes up by 5.
So the denominator goes up by 5. Okay? I'm going to let you do the second one on your own. Look at how the pattern goes up. For question B, what decimal do the equivalent fractions equal? We're just going to do I. So, 1/5, 2/10, 3/15, they all equal the same decimal. What is it, Quinn? Would you like help? So, if we started with 1 out of 5, we need to get this to become a power of 10. Oh, wait, is one of these already a power of 10 on the bottom? 2/10? Okay. What is 2 out of 10 as a decimal? 0.2. So this would be our equivalent decimal, and if you used your calculator and went 1 divided by 5, you would get 0.2 for all of these. Okay? For question 6, move this around a little bit. Is question 6 still on there?
Not quite.
No.
A bit more to the left.
Gosh, I can't see my screen
Alright,
anymore.
there we go.
Okay, so circle the fractions in which the numerator and the denominator have at least one common factor. Taya is not here. Ollie, do you know what I mean by one common factor?
Like you can like for example like 5 to get into 10 or something.
Right, so they can both be divided by the same number. So can 3 and 5 be divided by the same number? No, only 1. What about 2 and 10?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so we're going to circle that one. Their common factor is 2. Regan, can 3 and 10 be divided by the same number? No, what about 5 and 12?
No.
What about 12 and 15?
Yes.
Yeah, they could both be divided by 3, right? So we're going to circle that one. Okay, so do you see how you have to keep going through the rest of them? Okay, in part B, we're going to say which fractions in part A can be written in lower terms. Can you divide 2 and 10 by anything? Can it be written in lower terms? Yes. Can you divide 3 and 5 by anything? Can it be written in lower terms? No. What connection do they want you to draw? Ethan?
The fact that, or like fractions that have common factors can also be written in lower terms.
Exactly. Fractions that have common factors can still be written in lower terms. If there's no common factors, they can't. That's your trick for telling whether you can divide it more. Now, for part C, we need to use our explanation. In part B, circle the decimals that can be written as a fraction with the denominator smaller than 100. Nolan, do you have a question? Are you ready to answer?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't get what a common factor is.
A common factor is a factor that works for both numbers. So I'm going to put another piece of paper here and show you, okay? So we talked about 2 and 10, right? So, if I have the number 2, what can I divide it by? 1 and 2. These are all the factors of 2, okay? If I have the number 10, I can divide it by 1 and what? 1 times what is 10?
2. Oh, sorry.
No. You're on the right track. So it could be 1 and 10. Then we could do 2 and 5. Can we divide it by 3? Can we divide it by 4? We can divide it by 5. We've gotten there, so we know these are all the factors. Common factors mean they have the same factors in this list. So they both have 2. That is a common factor. Does that help? Awesome. Thanks for getting me to do that breakdown. Okay, so as we're looking at question C, we need to think about, I'm going to move this down here. Zoom in. Example they give is 0.16. So that's 16 out of 100, and we can divide it by 4 to get 4 out of 25, correct? Okay, so we need to look at, are there numbers that we can make them smaller once we turn them in a fraction? Because these will all become, say, 12 out of 100. Can we divide 12 and 100 by the same thing? We could divide them both by 2. So they could go into smaller terms. So they could become smaller than 100. What about 33 and 100? Do they have any common factors? No. So we can't circle that one. It would only be 100. It couldn't get smaller. What about 24? Yes. Basically any even number can at least go down to something out of 50 because we can divide it by 2. Okay? Last question and then you're done. I'm setting you free. You ready? I'm also setting Sam free, whose arms are probably dying. So, would you use a fraction or a decimal in each case? So, would you say a quarter of an hour or 0.25 of an hour? A quarter of an hour. Why wouldn't you say 0.25? Johnny?
Because it's too long.
It's too long. Why else? Angus?
Because an hour is 60 minutes.
An hour is 60 minutes, so you might get confused and think it's 25 minutes, right? So we might use a quarter. So think about the situation. Some of them, there's not as clear a right or wrong answer, but that is one. Go ahead and stop recording.